Welcome to the next episode of Church Planting 101 with the Ginger Vicar. In this episode, we're going to be discussing what fresh expressions of church look like. Specifically, my job is to run and help people plant surf churches around the world. That's a church that's built specifically for the surf and beach community. It's a group of people that are on mission to a people group and are very targeted in their mission. So what is a fresh expression of church? Well, it's understanding first and foremost, that the church model that we have currently may not be the best model with which to reach the world. At the moment, most of us in the Western world are running churches that are centered around gathering people to a Sunday service that presents the gospel to them, that engages them in some kind of spiritual journey. But often that isn't really tailor-made to the wider community and the culture that they are moving from as they step into a church culture. It's called an invitational model. The idea is that we put on a really good show, we make church as attractive as we possibly can and as relevant as we possibly can, and we invite people to come to that particular event, that particular service. We empower our local people and build confidence that when they bring one of their friends, it will be relevant, it will touch their hearts, and we as professional church leaders become as good as we possibly can in presenting this service and communicating the gospel. However, as successful as that has been in our varying cultures around the Western world, truthfully, we don't see millions and millions of people coming to our churches with our current model. In fact, in the UK, only around about 2% of people go to the church. If we go to France, it's something like 0.8% of people are in churches. And we're all delivering this type of model. So a fresh expression church is trying to mix up the model by which we go and do church in a new space. Previously, I've been involved in developing skate churches. How do we do a church in a skate park? Based on the principle, are we really going to get the skaters to come to our church? And when they do, they walk in and they suddenly are presented with singing. They've never really sung in their life before, and now they've got to do it in front of a bunch of other people. Then we talk about notices that they don't understand. Then we ask them to give some money to something they've never been to before. And then we present them with a message full of biblical language that they don't grasp and have never heard before. So we want them to step totally outside of their culture into a brand new culture, and they have to decode all of that before they can even get to the message of who Jesus is and the difference that he makes. So the idea again about a fresh expression of church as we go and plant is to mix up the style, to mix up the format, and to place a church into a new environment. So for us, when we did a skate church, we put it into the skate park. Wasn't trying to get the skaters to come to us. We went to where they were. And what we did is we skated for 30-40 minutes while we played some worship music that was really high energy and high impacting. And then we gathered everybody together on the skate ramps in the middle, and then we shared a little 5-minute word, and we asked some questions and we discussed that, and then we went out and skated again because we were doing what we love and we're engaging in this spiritual journey. And amongst that group of people, there were real committed Christians who were on fire for Jesus that loved skating. We were bringing church to where they were. We were forming community. We were allowing God's love to impact that space. We were starting the journey of sharing in communion with God, with one another, and explaining what Jesus has done on the cross. We were studying the Word together. We were having fellowship together, and we were beginning to equip them very simply with how to share the good news of Jesus with their friends. All happening in a skate park. The same happened in a nightclub. The same we tried to do in our Costa Coffee church. And that has very much been the journey of my life and my family's life for the last 8 years in the south of France, as we have embarked upon planting a church for a completely pre-Christian culture, not a post-Christian culture. Most people under the age of 25 have never heard who Jesus is. It's pre-Christian. We have tried to start a church specifically designed to the surf world. So maybe you are a surfer, maybe you are passionate about the ocean and you want to reach the surf community where you are. Well, a fresh expression of church is a great way by which to do that. A surf church is a church that has centered itself around the mission to the surf and beach community. It's not simply a church just for those that surf, it's a church for the community, the tribe of people that are tied into this surf world. So longboarders, bodyboarders, kiteboarders, paddleboarders, husbands and wives of those that do so, children that do so, people who just love to be at the ocean, in communities that are consumed with surf culture can all relate to this type of language. So in the south of France, we tried to work out how do we take this biblical model to the surf world. Do we impose our church culture upon them, or do we draw their culture into our space, but remain with the central message of who Jesus is, what he has done, and stay centered upon the mission of what the church is supposed to do? Well, that's exactly what we did. First, we started to meet in our home and we would eat together, laugh and talk. There'd be surf movies on the television, and then we'd go for a surf together. And that's how we began our surf church. We'd surf, we'd eat, and we'd start to share life. In the journey of sharing life, I started to share faith. As much we talk about finance, we talk about politics, we talk about family life, but also we would very pointedly talk about the difference that Jesus makes in all of those spaces. So very naturally, in a form of community, in my house, we began that journey. As that grew, we then decided to go into the local surf bars, which was phenomenal because there you already had all the surfers gathering. So the venue was set up with surf memorabilia, it was a user-friendly space, there was already food and drink available, and we would use that place on a Sunday afternoon to do church. We wouldn't do it Sunday morning because people went surfing, so we'd make it on a Sunday afternoon or a Sunday evening when the wind had already come on shore, and we would just meet together and we tried to roll out those 4 principles of church that I discussed in the previous video. What is a church? We tried to build the thing around what we're passionate about. We're passionate about Jesus and exploring who he is. We're passionate about surfing and loving the ocean. We're passionate about our local community and how to make a difference. And from the very beginning of our church journey, they're the principles that we held on to. A surf church for me is a church that is engaged in making a difference in the surf community. It isn't simply just about gathering people to a venue or a service that looks surfy with surfboards and surf movies in the background. It's how we practically make a difference in the lives of those people that are part of our community. So beach cleans, helping people learn to surf, providing for the poor in the community, engaging in local economic issues, that supporting local businesses, all sorts of different ways that we can engage in local community. One of the things that we decided to do is we helped a local surf artist, and we made him the resident artist for our church, and we provided accommodation for him. We gave him a workspace to shape surfboards, to create pieces of art. We built out fashion and fashion shows and art galleries within our spaces that we were using. We did movie premieres for the local surf community. We tried to look for any way to bless and engage the local community. And I guess that's what's at the heart of planting a surf church. It is a church that is wanting to bless and engage with that community. So, what does your community have? What does your community need? What does your community look like? What is your community made up of? What is the demographic? And then how does the church that you want to plant become relevant to those spaces? It's no good just importing another version of church, thinking that it would fit in your space. God has uniquely equipped you to be you, and is uniquely equipping your new church to be different from every other church, so it can be a light in the darkness of that specific place where you live. It's true to say that surfers think differently to everybody else. We are consumed by the surf report, what the wind is doing, the different weather patterns. We are tied into a whole bunch of very specific content around the world. We're passionate about travel and getting to different places around the world to ride waves. We have a natural connectivity to the ocean and to the environment. We're often environmentalists and understand the cause of protecting this beautiful planet. We are passionate about spiritual things because we understand the heartbeat of the ocean as it pulses waves towards us. We understand the spirituality of what it means to ride through a wave, getting barreled, making a turn, just standing on a wave and riding. We are a unique tribe, and a church that is surfer friendly understands that mentality and is able to speak God's love and God's truth into that space. So we are trying to create surfer friendly churches.